We spoke of empathy in the last session. So, what do we exactly mean by empathy? Ask yourself, do I engage with my learners? In what ways? Have I tried to find out their backgrounds or whether they are motivated enough? What is my attitude towards slow learners? Empathy is when we put ourselves in the shoes of the other person and try to see things from their point of view. There could be several factors influencing learners' motivation levels, and there is no harm in trying to understand or at least get a very general idea about these influencing factors. This can be done over a period of time and embedded in your teaching sessions. For instance, the first session of the academic year could start with a GTKY or a getting to know you activity or an icebreaker. The Find Someone Who sheet, which you're seeing on your slide, is given to each student who goes around asking questions one by one to classmates or coursemates and writing their names against each criterion if the answer is positive. This activity enables a lot of mingling and consequently unintimidating communication among students, and during feedback stage the teacher comes to know about learner involvement and also learner inclinations and backgrounds. Surveys or a questionnaire which give the teacher an idea about different learner backgrounds, learning styles, motivational factors, etc., can also be customized exclusively with that intention. Here are some ways in which you can motivate your students and give a sense of meaning to the program they are pursuing. It is also important to acknowledge each learner as a unique subject with individual traits that will influence their learning process. Different learners are comfortable receiving input in different ways. The evaluation system, unfortunately, has universal standard and parameters to assess learner abilities. But every learner is unique. We go by the presumption that the lecture method is the most effective means of delivering knowledge. However, not all learners are auditory learners. There could be some who are visual learners, that is, learners who like to watch and learn, and some who are kinesthetic learners, that is, learners who learn by doing or learn experientially. Though there might be constraints in catering to every learner type, the teacher could incorporate matter or embed activities that will have some amount of inclusiveness and sensitivity towards all learner types. The teacher must be capable of acknowledging the learner's ability, acknowledging learner types, sensitivity towards learner backgrounds, acknowledging the importance of the learning environment, facilitating rather than teaching. Now let's consider another vital aspect of grouping and see how grouping may impact learning. Ask yourself, how many times have I planned grouping patterns in advance or given a thought to the way I should be grouping my learners? How many times have I varied the interaction pattern among learners so that I create maximum opportunities for participation, interaction, and peer teaching? Am I able to do differential learning? Am I able to manage mixed ability groups? When grouping learners or evaluating learner performance, the teacher should bear in mind the innate and cultural factors determining different learner abilities. If a student is a strong individual learner and the teacher puts him or her repeatedly in a group, the student may not be able to perform well. Similarly, if a learner is slow and is paired with a very fast learner, where both are assigned the same task, chances are the slow learner will not get an opportunity to perform or match the pace of the fast learner. Therefore, even grouping patterns need to be thought out carefully. The teacher should be very clever at grouping learners in a manner appropriate to the task. If the teacher is creating mixed ability groups, then work needs to be delegated to each member so that there is no overstepping or overlap. For certain activities, the fast learners can be assigned to peer teach, that is, guide and assist the slow learners, or be enablers in their own groups. Another way of keeping a check on the domination and overwhelming presence of fast and extrovert learners is by incentivizing turn giving. That is, instructing learners that the more they allow others in the group to speak and participate, the more brownie points they score. Likewise, an effective way of keeping an individual learner engaged in group work, for instance, is by making him or her the reporter of the group activity. The learner's role will be that of an observer, and he or she will document the participation of group members and score them on different parameters prescribed by the teacher. So let's have a look at some of the possible parameters: participation, turn-taking, situational leadership skills, which can include initiating action, management and delegation, effective communication, collaboration, creativity, mediation. Each member of the group can be scored on these parameters by the observer. The observing member can even add descriptive comments about the procedure and performance and participation of members. This is a sample of an observation template. There are some very interesting techniques and strategies to ensure participation and turn-taking in groups. I will give you an example of a strategy which the teacher can employ. The teacher gives every group a pack of cards which they keep in the center. Every time a member speaks, they pick up a card. At the end of the group discussion, the number of turns a member has taken to speak is evident from the number of cards they have in their hands. Cards can be replaced by U-pins or matchsticks or beads, whatever is convenient and readily available. Besides participation of students in groups, nomination is another area where the teacher can show fairness and impartial treatment. While eliciting responses or delegating tasks, the teacher needs to nominate and assign tasks uniformly, keeping in mind the student's strength and ability. Shy learners can be encouraged to participate by responding to closed questions with short responses. More outgoing learners can be thrown open questions which demand more complex responses and depend on one's analytical, creative, and validating skills, and in this manner be prompted to think out of the box. Empathy ought to be indispensable and integral to a teacher, especially while correcting errors. Adult learners are sensitive to criticism and are generally reluctant to be open and participative because of high affective filters. Even more, they are apprehensive of making mistakes or responding incorrectly, which is why, as teachers, we have to show extra sensitivity during feedback and error correction stage. Talking down to a student, saying he or she is wrong, not allowing a student to justify or validate a statement just because it has a different perspective, are some of the things any teacher needs to avoid. In case of a conceptual misunderstanding, the teacher needs to ask probing questions or comprehension or concept check questions and revisit the concept taught earlier and deal with it again. After all, if a concept has been misunderstood, the onus is also on the teacher. So, finally, I'd like you to consider some reflection questions in the light of all that we have discussed. Ask yourself, am I too distant from my learners or too friendly? In what ways does this impact my students or my teaching? Do I overlook or consider external factors influencing teaching? Do I practice differential learning in my classroom? What words and gestures do I use to compliment or correct my learners? What strategies can I use while correcting learners?